The barracks fell silent the moment Private Sarah Thompson stepped inside. You could feel the sneers before they even came, the weight of them pressing down like an invisible force. Her boots, still stiff from her first week of training, made a soft thud on the polished floor as she moved to her bunk. She was the only one with worn-out boots and a second-hand duffel bag, the only one who didn't belong here. At least that's how the others saw it. "Hey, Thompson, you lose your way to the local farm?" Corporal Harris called out from across the room, his laugh echoing in the stillness. A few others joined in, the sounds of snickers and chuckles creeping in like a cold wind. It was an old joke, one that Sarah had heard more times than she cared to count. The small-town girl who didn't know how to keep her uniform straight, how to talk right, how to act like a real soldier. They thought she was just another nobody, underestimated from the start. A farm girl trying to make it in a world where you either had the right background or you didn't. Sarah stayed quiet, keeping her gaze on the floor, her hands tightly gripping the edge of her cot. She wasn't about to give them the satisfaction of seeing her crack. Not today. Drill Sergeant Ramirez strode in just then, his boots thundering on the floor, cutting through the murmurs like a knife through butter. The room snapped to attention. Ramirez's gaze swept across the line of recruits, his eyes cold and calculating. "You all think this is a joke? This is where you'll be molded into soldiers. And some of you," his eyes landed on Sarah, "don't even belong here." The room went quiet. Every eye was on her now. The whispers started again, but this time they were sharper. "What's she even doing here? She's just taking up space." Her stomach twisted, but she didn't flinch. She couldn't. Not in front of them. "Private Thompson," Ramirez barked, his voice slicing through her thoughts. "You think this is a joke? I didn't see you at inspection yesterday. I didn't see your boots shining. Were you busy with your little farm chores?" His words hung in the air, heavy and mocking. "You don't belong here. Do us all a favor and quit while you still can." Her heart pounded in her chest, the ridicule stinging deeper than any physical pain. For a moment, she thought she might break, but then she thought about her father, how he'd always told her that when things got tough, you didn't fold. You dug in, you held steady, and you kept moving forward, no matter how heavy the load. She straightened her back, pushing the pain down. "Yes, Sergeant," she replied, her voice even. It wasn't much, but it was all she had. The others laughed, of course, thinking she was just a joke. But somewhere in the back of her mind, Sarah knew that wasn't the end of it. Not by a long shot. Later that night, as Sarah lay on her bunk, the sounds of laughter and whispered insults still echoed in her ears. Her bunkmates had already written her off, treating her like a nobody who didn't belong in the same room as them. They didn't see her grit, her determination. They didn't see how she'd grown up on the farm, hauling hay bales, fixing fences, getting dirt under her nails day after day. They didn't know that this wasn't the hardest thing she'd ever done. No, that honor belonged to the years she'd spent working double shifts just to pay for her ticket here. In the dim light, her hands moved over her uniform, checking for any loose threads or dirt. It wasn't perfect, but she wasn't going to let anyone else tell her she wasn't trying. It was then that she noticed him. Corporal Johnson, the quiet one who had barely said 2 words to her. He was standing in the doorway, watching her. She froze, unsure of what he was going to do or say. "You keep your head up, Thompson," he said quietly, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "Not everyone here is going to make it easy on you, but I saw you out there today. You didn't quit. That's more than a lot of them can say." Sarah met his eyes for a second, and something in her chest tightened. Was he actually trying to help her? Or was he just another person who felt sorry for her? Either way, it didn't matter. She nodded, though she didn't trust her voice. "Thanks, Corporal." He left as quietly as he'd come, and the barracks went back to its usual rhythm. But something had changed in Sarah. She knew she wasn't done yet. No, she was far from it. There was more to her than they saw, and she was going to show them. But the real question was, would they ever see it? The next morning, Ramirez called out every recruit for a physical fitness test. No one was looking forward to it, but Sarah knew this would be her chance to prove them wrong. She wasn't going to let their words define her. As she lined up with the others, she could feel the eyes of her peers on her, waiting for her to falter. Ramirez stepped in front of her, his smirk barely visible under his thick mustache. "Thompson," he sneered, "let's see if you can even keep up with the rest of these soldiers, or if you're just another farm girl in over her head." But what Ramirez didn't know was that Sarah wasn't just any farm girl, and what the others didn't know was that she was done being underestimated. As the test began, Sarah pushed her body harder than she ever had before. Every step, every breath, felt like it could break her, but she kept moving. When she finished, gasping for air, she didn't expect much, but she knew one thing. She had given them everything. Sergeant Ramirez didn't say a word. The others didn't laugh, but Sarah noticed something. The eyes on her were different now, not full of mockery, but something else. Curiosity, maybe, or respect. But there was no way to know yet. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The morning fog hadn't yet lifted, but the sound of boots marching in perfect cadence echoed across the barracks. The drill sergeants had already begun barking orders, and Sarah's body was still aching from yesterday's grueling test. She barely slept, haunted by the laughter and the stares. But today she had to push through. She had to prove herself, again. "Thompson, you better not be slacking today." Sergeant Ramirez's voice cut through the air like a whip. Sarah didn't flinch. She knew what was coming. She always did. Her boots hit the ground harder as she joined the others for morning formation. The chill in the air made her breath visible, but she focused on keeping her body in line, just like she'd been taught. No room for mistakes, no room for weakness. Breakfast in the mess hall was another challenge. The chatter of her fellow recruits felt louder today. They were all talking about the upcoming field training exercise, and of course, they found ways to bring her into it. "Bet Thompson's going to be the first one to quit," one of the guys, Private Reynolds, sneered as he loaded his tray with scrambled eggs. "You know, I heard she couldn't even keep up during the last PT test." The others snickered, their eyes sliding toward her like sharks circling prey. Sarah didn't look up. She just picked up her tray and walked to the farthest corner of the room, finding an empty seat by the window. The food didn't taste like anything today. It never did anymore. Her mind raced as she shoveled the eggs into her mouth mechanically. No one would let her forget where she came from. No one would let her forget that she was just a farm girl trying to survive in a world that didn't think she belonged. But no matter what they said, she wasn't going to quit. She couldn't. As the day went on, the training grew more intense. The platoon was broken into squads for a field exercise that would test everything: endurance, teamwork, tactics. Sarah's squad was led by Sergeant Ramirez, and he didn't hide his disdain for her. His words were harsh, designed to break her. "Thompson, you better stay out of my way today," he barked as they lined up for the drill. "If you slow down the squad, I'll make sure you don't make it past this week." Sarah swallowed hard. The words hit her like a punch to the gut, but she didn't let it show. She could already feel the weight of their expectations, the pressure to prove she wasn't a mistake. The drill was brutal, endless, crawling through mud, carrying heavy packs, running until her legs felt like lead. By the time they reached the halfway point, Sarah's breath was ragged, her chest burning, but she kept moving. The others didn't. They were looking for a reason to drop out, and some of them took it. Private Reynolds was the first to fall behind, clutching his side and groaning. Sarah's legs shook as she pushed forward, but she couldn't stop now. She wouldn't. "Come on, Thompson." Ramirez's voice was sharp, but there was something else behind it now, something more personal. "Hurry the hell up. You think this is a joke?" She kept her mouth shut, ignoring the stares, the taunts, the heat of the sun bearing down on her. All that mattered was putting one foot in front of the other. She had to finish this, for herself. But then, as they reached the final stretch of the course, Sarah heard a sickening sound, the unmistakable snap of a twig, followed by a sharp gasp. "Private Reynolds is down," Sergeant Ramirez called out, his voice suddenly filled with urgency. Sarah didn't hesitate. She dropped her pack and rushed back to Reynolds, her legs screaming in protest, but she pushed through. When she reached him, he was clutching his ankle, his face pale. I can't go on," he whimpered, his breath shallow. "Get up," Sarah snapped, gripping his arm and pulling him into a sitting position. "You're not quitting on me." Get on your feet, Reynolds. We finish together. He looked at her, his eyes wide with disbelief. I can't. You don't understand. It's too much. You're not getting out of this. Get up. Her words came out sharper than she intended, but she didn't care. She didn't give a damn if Reynolds hated her for pushing him. To her surprise, he staggered to his feet, his arms still draped over her shoulder. Together they limped to the finish line. The others were already waiting, their eyes on Sarah and Reynolds, but no one said anything. They didn't need to. The look on their faces said it all. When they crossed the finish line, Sergeant Ramirez was standing there, arms crossed, his eyes cold. He didn't say a word at first, just stared at Sarah as if trying to figure her out. Then he turned to Reynolds. You're lucky Thompson's got some damn sense in her, he growled. You can thank her for finishing this exercise. Reynolds didn't look her in the eye. He just nodded, his face flushed with shame. Sarah stood tall, ignoring the ache in her body, the sweat dripping from her forehead. She didn't need his gratitude. She didn't need any of them to like her. But she had done something today. She had made a choice, and it had paid off. As the platoon began to move on to the next phase of the training, Sarah could feel the change. It was subtle, but it was there. The whispers, the laughs, the mocking, it all stopped, just for a moment. They had seen something in her, something they hadn't expected. Later that night, when everyone had settled into their bunks, the usual silence of the barracks was broken by a soft voice. It was Corporal Johnson, the quiet one who had noticed her struggle from the start. Good work today, Thompson, he said, his voice low but steady. Sarah turned toward him, surprised. She hadn't expected him to say anything, let alone compliment her. Thanks, Corporal. He gave her a small nod, then glanced around to make sure no one else was listening. Don't let them get to you. You've got something they don't see yet. For the first time in a long time, Sarah felt a flicker of hope. It wasn't much, but it was enough. She wasn't finished, not by a long shot. The next day, Sergeant Ramirez's voice rang out once again, and Sarah knew what was coming. She was ready, though. She had proven something. And this time, it was her turn to show them that she belonged. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The day started with a cold bite in. The air, the sun barely peeking over the horizon as the squad lined up for their morning run. Sarah's legs were still sore from the day before, but she didn't dare show it. No weakness. Not after yesterday. Sergeant Ramirez's voice cut through the morning silence, his usual sharp tone biting into the air. Move it, Thompson. Keep up or you'll get left behind again. We don't have time for dead weight in this squad. His words weren't new. He had been on her from the moment she stepped onto the training ground. Every run, every drill, every moment, it was like he was watching her for the slightest mistake. The others were no different, either ignoring her completely or waiting for her to stumble. Sarah pushed her legs harder, ignoring the way they screamed for a break. Sweat mixed with the cold air, making her feel alive in a way that no one else could understand. She wasn't going to let them see her fall behind. Not this time. The pace was relentless. The others in her squad, Private Reynolds included, kept their eyes forward, pushing their bodies like machines. But Sarah was different. She was fighting for something deeper than just completing the run. Every step was an act of defiance. Every breath a challenge to everything they thought she was. She kept up, barely, until the end of the course. But when she crossed the finish line, she couldn't even catch her breath before Ramirez was in her face again. You think you've earned a spot here? He spat, his face inches from hers. You're just a liability, Thompson. I should have sent you home weeks ago. Maybe that's what you need. A wake-up call. The others stood around, barely even acknowledging the confrontation. But Sarah could feel their eyes on her, some with pity, some with disdain. No one ever wanted to speak up, not even when Ramirez was wrong. Not even when they knew she was doing her best. As they moved to the next part of training, the tension hung in the air like a storm cloud. The squad was asked to set up a mock perimeter, a vital skill for any soldier. Each squad member was assigned a task: lookout, guard duty, reconnaissance. The roles were simple, but the stakes felt higher than they ever had before. It was her chance to prove that she wasn't just taking up space. Sergeant Ramirez handed out the orders. Sarah was tasked with securing the perimeter, one of the most critical jobs. She took a deep breath, scanning the area around her as the others set up their positions. It wasn't just about staying alive. It was about showing them that she could be counted on, that she wasn't some mistake. She was a soldier. As she moved through the mock terrain, checking the perimeter, the whispers started again. It was Reynolds this time. He was just behind her, making sure everyone knew his thoughts. "Look at her, pretending like she knows what she's doing," he muttered to Private Moore. Sarah's ears burned. She could feel his eyes on her, like daggers at her back. "She's barely keeping up. She won't last long out here. Mark my words." Sarah tried to ignore it, but it was hard to. It always was. No matter how much she tried to focus, no matter how hard she worked to prove herself, they were always watching, always waiting for her to fail. She completed her checks in silence, her hands steady as she secured each position. Then, just as she was finishing the last checkpoint, something unexpected happened. A sound, sharp, loud, unmistakable, ripped through the air. A flare shot into the sky, the signal for an attack. "Ambush!" Ramirez shouted, his voice suddenly tight with urgency. "Positions! Now!" The chaos that followed felt like it came out of nowhere. The squad scrambled to their stations, rifles raised, trying to get a beat on the mock attackers. Sarah felt her pulse quicken. The drill had escalated from a test to something real. No one had expected this. She rushed to her position, her heart thudding in her chest. But as she glanced to her left, she saw something that made her blood run cold. Reynolds, the one who had mocked her, was frozen. His rifle wasn't up, his hands shaking. "Reynolds!" she shouted, but he didn't move. Sergeant Ramirez was already charging toward the mock enemy, barking orders, but Sarah knew something wasn't right. Reynolds wasn't going to be able to help. In that moment, she realized something. It was up to her. Without thinking, she dropped to her knees and set her sights on the attackers, her fingers steady as she loaded her rifle. The drill had turned into a real test of skill, and if she didn't act fast, they would all be in trouble. She aimed at the nearest target, steadying her breath, and fired. The shot rang out, hitting the mock attacker square in the chest. She fired again, then another. She didn't stop until she had cleared the immediate area, her pulse steady and her mind sharp. She couldn't afford to miss. When the drill was over, when the last mock enemy was down, there was a stunned silence. No one spoke, not a word. Sarah stood there, rifle in hand, her breathing heavy but controlled. She had done it. She had held her ground. But when Sergeant Ramirez finally spoke, his words were cutting. "Nice shooting, Thompson, but you're still not cut out for this," he said, his voice colder than ever. "You saved the day this time, but it won't always be like this. One slip up, and you'll be gone." The squad was silent. No one said anything. Not even Reynolds, who had watched her save them all. They had seen what she was capable of, but they wouldn't admit it. Not yet. Then as the squad began to gather their gear, something shifted. Corporal Johnson, the quiet one who had always watched her from a distance, stepped forward. He hadn't said a word during the drill, but now with the others distracted, he looked her in the eye. "You did good today, Thompson," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Don't let Ramirez get to you. He's just pissed because you showed him up." Sarah didn't know what to say. She simply nodded, her eyes meeting his for a moment, before he turned away to join the rest of the squad. But she knew. She had earned something today. Not just their respect, but her own. The next day, Ramirez didn't say a word to her, and neither did the others. It wasn't because they didn't know what had happened. It was because they didn't know how to handle it. She had shifted the power balance. She wasn't just some farm girl anymore. She was a soldier. She didn't need their approval. She had proven something bigger than that. But as the days passed, Sarah could feel the weight of the quiet. The other recruits were starting to realize that she wasn't the joke they thought she was, that she was capable, but there was still something lingering in the air. A silent challenge, unspoken, but heavy. They would wait for her to slip up. They would wait for her to fail. But Sarah knew better than to quit now. She had already come too far, and soon they would all learn just how far she was willing to go. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The air was thick with tension as Sarah stood at attention, watching her fellow recruits file into formation. Sergeant Ramirez's voice rang out, sharp and authoritative as usual. His eyes swept across the line, taking in each of them, measuring them, as if they were all just numbers to be tested, discarded, or praised based on their performance. All right, listen up. Today's the day we push you to the limit. This isn't just about following orders. This is about survival. You all need to prove to me and to yourselves that you have what it takes. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest, her hands steady but clenched at her sides. She could already feel the weight of the day pressing down on her. It had been building for weeks. Every drill, every insult, every whisper in the barracks had led to this moment. She knew it, and so did everyone else. Today would either make or break her. "Private Thompson," Ramirez called out, his voice cold as ice. "You better keep up today. I've seen nothing but weakness from you. I'm going to give you one more chance to prove you belong here. Don't waste it." The words stung as they always did, but this time something inside Sarah shifted. The humiliation wasn't the same. It didn't hurt like it used to. It fueled her. As the squad moved out into the field, the intensity of the day's exercise hit her all at once. The obstacles were tougher, the commands sharper. They had to carry heavy packs through thick mud, climb over walls, crawl under barbed wire. Every obstacle designed to break them down, to make them question whether they were strong enough. Sarah pushed herself harder than ever before. Every step felt like a battle, every breath a struggle. She could feel the eyes of her fellow soldiers on her, some hoping she'd fail, others silently rooting for her. But none of it mattered. She wasn't doing this for them. She was doing this for herself. As she neared the final leg of the course, Sarah's body was screaming for rest. Her legs were stiff and sore, her breathing ragged. And then, just as she was about to push through the last wall, her vision blurred. She stumbled, her foot catching on the uneven ground, and she fell hard to the ground. The sound of her body hitting the dirt was drowned out by the jeers from behind her. "Told you she couldn't do it!" Reynolds' voice rang out from the back of the pack. "Farm girl's too weak for this." Laughter followed, cruel and mocking. Sarah's face burned, her pride shattered. But she didn't stay down for long. She pushed herself back to her feet, ignoring the pain in her knees, the tightness in her chest. She had to finish this. She she stumbled toward the last wall. Each step was harder than the last, but she kept moving. She wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of watching her fail. She wasn't going to be their joke. And then in the middle of the obstacle course, something unexpected happened. As Sarah reached for the top of the wall, her hand slipped. Her body crashed back down, hard, hitting the ground with a sickening thud. A collective gasp went through the squad. The laughter stopped. "Thompson, get up!" Ramirez barked, his voice low and filled with something that Sarah couldn't quite place. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was something else. But she could hear the frustration in his tone. She wanted to stay down. She wanted to curl up and cry. But she couldn't. She had no choice. She wasn't going to let anyone see her break. She gritted her teeth, hands shaking as she pushed herself to her feet once again. There was a moment of silence as she grabbed the wall for the third time. The others were watching now, not mocking, not jeering, just watching. Some like Reynolds with disbelief. Some like Corporal Johnson with quiet respect. With one final surge of energy, Sarah scrambled to the top of the wall, her fingers gripping the edges. She didn't care about the pain anymore. She didn't care about the cuts on her hands or the bruises that were already forming. She was almost there. She reached the top and swung herself over, landing hard on the other side. The cheers erupted behind her, but they weren't cruel this time. They were different. They were real. She had done it. She had finished. But just as she started to catch her breath, Sergeant Ramirez's voice cut through the air once more. "Thompson," he called out, his words ringing with authority. "You think you've proven something today? You think one lucky move is enough to make me believe you're ready?" The squad fell silent again. Sarah's heart sank. She had expected this. Ramirez wasn't one to back down easily, not even when she had clearly pushed herself harder than anyone else. But then something happened that she didn't expect. Corporal Johnson, the quiet one who had always been in the background, stepped forward. "Sir," he said, his voice calm but firm, With all due respect, I think you're wrong. Thompson didn't just finish the course. She fought through everything. No one else did that. Not today. Not under this kind of pressure. There was a long pause as Ramirez glared at Johnson. The tension was palpable, and Sarah held her breath. She had never seen this side of Johnson before. He had always kept his distance, offering support in quiet moments. But now he was standing up to Ramirez. Ramirez's eyes narrowed, his jaw clenched. For a moment, Sarah thought he might explode. But then, to everyone's surprise, he took a step back. The anger in his eyes faded, replaced by something more calculating. "Fine," he said, his voice still laced with authority. "Thompson, you're not off the hook yet. But today, you earned your spot in this squad. Don't think it'll be easy from here on out. But you earned a little respect." For a moment, the world seemed to freeze. Ramirez had never said anything like that before. Sarah stood there, frozen, as the weight of his words hit her. She wasn't just another recruit anymore. She was a soldier. The others began to murmur, glancing at each other, their expressions unreadable. Sarah knew the truth now. They had seen her fight. They had seen her stand up, even when everything inside her screamed to quit. She had earned their respect, even if they wouldn't admit it yet. Later that night, in the quiet of the barracks, Sarah sat on her bunk, staring at the ceiling. The exhaustion weighed on her, but there was something else, a feeling she hadn't had in a long time, a sense of accomplishment. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living it. She was one of them. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like she belonged. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The barracks were quieter than usual, the low murmur of voices replaced by an uneasy stillness. Sarah sat on her bunk, staring at her boots, trying to steady her breath after the morning's grueling drill. There was a strange weight in the air. The squad had been through hell in the past few weeks, but today felt different. Today there was a sense of something shifting, something about to break. And then Sergeant Ramirez entered, his boots thundering on the floor. He was in full uniform, his expression unreadable, his gaze scanning the room. The tension in the air grew thicker, almost suffocating. Everyone knew it was coming. Everyone knew this day would be the one where they'd be tested for real. "Private Thompson," Ramirez's voice rang out, sharp and deliberate. "Get your gear. We're heading out for a final exercise. It's do or die time. You've been doing all right, but you're not there yet. Prove to me you belong." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. The words stung, as they always did. She had done everything he asked. She had pushed herself harder than anyone else in the squad. But it still wasn't enough. She still wasn't good enough for him. She nodded and grabbed her bag. She wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing her hesitate. Not this time. The squad lined up outside the barracks, the weight of their backpacks pulling on their shoulders, the sun beating down on them. Ramirez led them into the field for the final exercise, a timed mission designed to test their endurance, their teamwork, their ability to think under pressure. Everyone had been waiting for this. It was the moment that would decide whether they moved on to the next phase of training or were sent home. As they set off, Sarah could feel the sweat already dripping down her back, her muscles aching with every step. The others were ahead, moving quickly, but Sarah kept pushing herself, fighting to keep up. She couldn't afford to fall behind now. She couldn't afford to be the one who let the squad down. They came to the first obstacle, a wall that was higher than anything they had faced before. One by one, the squad members scrambled up, barely stopping to catch their breath. Sarah was right behind them, ready to go, when something unexpected happened. Reynolds, the same one who had mocked her so many times, froze in front of the wall. His hands were shaking, his face pale. "I can't do it. I can't make it," he muttered, his voice shaky. The others were already moving past him, but Sarah didn't hesitate. Without thinking, she rushed forward, positioning herself beside him. "Reynolds, move," she said, her voice firm. "We don't stop for anyone. Get up now." He hesitated, looking at her like she was crazy, but something in her eyes must have told him she wasn't going to let him quit. He pushed himself up, grabbing her hand as she pulled him over the wall. They didn't have time to look back. There were more obstacles ahead, more tests, but this time something felt different. Reynolds wasn't mocking her anymore. He wasn't the same person who had called her a joke. The rest of the exercise was brutal. They had to carry wounded squad members, climb under barbed wire, cross rivers, and navigate through dense woods, all while being timed, all while fighting exhaustion. Every minute felt like an eternity. Sarah's body was exhausted, her legs barely able to keep moving, but she kept going. She couldn't stop. Not now. And then they came to the final challenge. A simulated ambush. The squad had to move quickly, set up a defensive perimeter, and neutralize the enemy. But just as they were about to engage, something went wrong. The squad leader, Sergeant Ramirez, froze. His command was unclear, his movements hesitant. Sarah saw it, saw the opportunity, and without thinking, she took charge. "Form up, now!" she shouted, her voice cutting through the confusion. "Everyone, position! Get ready!" For a moment, everything went silent, and then just as quickly, the squad moved into action. Sarah's orders were followed without question. It was like everything clicked. The squad was functioning as a team, a real unit. When the drill ended, the exercise had taken its toll. Everyone was exhausted, but Sarah stood tall, her heart pounding in her chest. The others were catching their breath, but she didn't dare look at them just yet. She wasn't sure what to expect. Then Sergeant Ramirez walked up to her. His face was unreadable. For a moment, Sarah thought he was going to tear her down again, but this time he didn't. "Thompson," he said quietly, his voice low. "You didn't just get through this exercise, you led them. You held the squad together when I couldn't. I didn't expect that." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't expected this. Not from him. Not after everything he'd said. For a moment there was only silence. Then Ramirez nodded once, the weight of his approval hanging in the air. "You've earned your place in this squad. You earned my respect." It wasn't much, but it was everything. Later that night, as Sarah lay in her bunk, the others settled around her. The usual banter, the usual insults, none of it came. There was only quiet, respect, and even Reynolds, who had once called her a farm girl, gave her a nod. She didn't need their approval. She had earned something bigger. She had earned her place in this world. As the lights dimmed and the squad drifted off to sleep, Sarah's thoughts lingered on the day's events. She had fought hard for this, harder than anyone would ever know. But in that moment, she realized something important. It wasn't about proving herself to anyone else. It was about proving to herself that she was capable, that she was worthy. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was thriving. And tomorrow she would take that strength with her, one step at a time. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The final scene fades in. Sarah stands tall, the sun setting behind her, casting a long shadow on the tarmac. The American flag flutters gently in the wind, the red, white, and blue shimmering in the fading light. She's in uniform, proud, eyes steady and focused. Her heart beats in rhythm with the quiet, unspoken weight of everything she's overcome. Behind her, the other soldiers, her squad, once her critics, stand in line, silent but resolute. One by one, they nod, acknowledging her. No words necessary. Sergeant Ramirez approaches, his usual harsh demeanor softened. He stops just in front of Sarah and, with a quiet but respectful nod, he gives her the recognition she's earned. It's the only thing that matters. She's finally earned her place, not just in the squad, but in her own heart. As the camera lingers on Sarah's face, a moment of calm washes over her. She's been through the fire and come out stronger, unbroken. The journey was long, but it wasn't just about proving them wrong. It was about proving to herself that she was worthy. Worthy of respect, worthy of honor, worthy of being a soldier. The lesson here is simple, but it's something that goes deeper than words. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. You can't control how people see you, but you can control what you do when the world doubts you. Stand tall, hold your ground, and keep moving forward. Resilience, dignity, and brotherhood aren't just ideals. They're the foundation that holds us together. If this story resonates with you, share your thoughts and experiences in the comments. Let us know what strength and honor mean to you. Don't forget to like this video to show your support and subscribe to join us for more stories that challenge, inspire, and remind us all of the power we have within. Take care, stay strong, and always remember, no matter what life throws at you, you are never alone.